name is Remo. I'm the co-founder of Juicing.Systems. We are a Canadian company specializing cold press juice processing equipment, more precisely pressing equipment. We are the North American distributor for Kreutzmeier, which is a bell press supplier. We do a whole bunch of equipment for them, including pasteurizers and destoners and bottling lines as well. But we're mainly focusing on grinding and pressing equipment. I think the answer is twofold. One is we have the double bell presses that run the product through between 8 and 15 rollers, so they get squeezed kind of 8 to 15 times. That's one of the things. The other thing, we have a very specialized mill that, especially with harder to squeeze product and higher value product like turmeric or ginger, we grind it in a way that is very, it's finer, and thus we can extract more. Pineapple is another example. We get very, very good results with the double bell presses. So we squeeze harder, we grind a little different than the usual grinder we see on the market. So that together gives you a higher yield. So, being a juicing facility ourselves, we looked carefully at our labor costs and yields. We started with a rack and cloth like press, and we switched over to bell press, and we saw quite a drastic decrease in labor and a few percentage increase in yield of our products that we were juicing. And so we kind of wanted to make a little bit of a calculator. We basically calculated out how long it would take us to pay off the equipment that we were buying as well, and or the interest rate on a financing loan. Obviously, it depends on the volume that you press, but we can basically, through labor savings and increased yields, we can, from a low production end to a high production scenario, we can pay off these machines within 2 to 5 years on the low side and within months on the high side. So for example, if you're producing 20,000 pounds a day, 4 days a week, you can pay off the machine within months just by reduced labor cost, but mainly higher yield, just a 3% higher yield on your product. And we see, ranging from 3 to 10% higher yields depending on the product. You produce so many more bottles per day, which pays off the equipment literally within months. And we've done this and seen it in live scenarios in multiple places. For a smaller producer, the return or the payoff of the equipment is probably 2 to 5 years, where then we kind of hop over to the financing portion, where we can say, well, within days, you can, with reduced labor and higher yields, with the increased income, you can make a payment on the financing of this equipment. If you want to know how, you can supply us with your numbers, production numbers, yields, and we can calculate that out for you. We grind directly into our press, so there's no intermediary pump and hose. So a lot of other systems, they grind into a hopper. It does two things. One, it oxidizes the product, depending on the product, because it sits in the open before it gets squeezed. And two, with drier product like ginger or turmeric, it needs to be pumped, and that is harder with a pumping dry product through a hose. So with our systems, we grind directly onto the belt. So there's not a person required there to make sure that everything pumps. Also lesser stoppages And then our presses basically do not require a dedicated person to stand there and fill bags or cloths, so we can get away with that person. It's an automated process. Basically, a person just removes the mash and whatever the infeed looks like with washing and sorting, and but once it reaches our water bath, it just gets pulled up, ground, pressed, and ejected. The juice is pumped automatically into tanks, so there is nothing really required there in terms of labor. So an equivalent, when you think of time, an equivalent system of the magnitude or the cost with comparable pressing methods with closses or squeeze boxes of that sort, our cost for the throughput is probably 30% less. Or if you spend the same amount of money, you're probably almost twice as fast with a continuous belt press. So there is a daily hours worked labor savings, plus there's no after cleaning down the machines, obviously, but no washing cloths or bags or that sort. That is taken care of by the machine with a pressure washer. Yeah, so there's labor savings there. So more throughput in an hour, less people standing required to run the machine, no after cleaning of bags and so forth. We have started our company in 2011 with a juicing operation. So our knowledge for these machines does not come from a brochure or a hearsay. We actually use this equipment and have been for over 10 years. We are in a facility that we can process up to 20,000 pounds an hour. It's a large press, double belt press. And we're very good at figuring out what equipment you need for your throughputs. Out of that pressing a company, we formed Juicing.Systems because with this relatively new technology 10 years ago, we had a lot of interest in the continuous process and the higher yields. And we founded Juicing.Systems. We sold the first presses in 2014, almost 10 years ago. Incorporated Juicing.Systems in 2016, I believe, and have been running ever since. I think the main thing about us that differentiates us from other suppliers is that we know these machines intimately. We use them ourselves daily. So, the quirks of every machine we're very familiar with, and we know what works and what doesn't work. We know which spare parts to keep on the shelf, because in 10 years of running these machines, you kind of get to know what breaks more often or is more prone to break or is a wear part. So it comes from first-hand experience.